But what's a forest? A forest may be defined ecologically or even politically. So this is kind of like the romantic approach of different ways of seeing this. For example, old-growth forest is an ecosystem that has never been cut or cleared by humans. Old-growth rainforest and moist forest characterize for most tropical forests. In fact, it's probably the commonest type of ecosystem you can find anywhere in the humid tropics. The definition of degraded forest also varies. Degraded means forest that has been subject to activities such as logging and various other degrees of forest clearance. Degraded forests are also considered to result from excess of hunting, invasive species, encroachment, and fire. Of course, what we were talking about in Brazilian rainforests. Forests that have gone through the process of deforestation are often called secondary forests. These forests have developed land use for intensive agriculture and pastures, for example. Regenerate mostly from seeds that are either dispersed from nearby remnants of forest or germinate from buried seeds. Many rodents in tropical rainforest happen to bury buried seeds as they travel through open areas. Also, birds and bats may contribute immensely to the restoration of secondary forest gaps or forest areas. Interestingly, secondary forests rapidly develop some of the structural, compositional, and functional characteristics of the old-growth forest. So secondary forests have the capacity to actually regenerate relatively quickly from a previous destruction. Since the dawn of agriculture, humans have cleared forests to make room for crops. Approximately 70% of the animals considered endangered in Brazil, since we're talking about Brazil, are endangered because of the destruction of tropical rainforests there. In that same area, there are approximately 8,000 species of endemic plants and 55 species of birds that are critically endangered. 21 endemic mammal species are also in critical conditions. When Europeans came to the New World, they began to cut forests, and pretty much like European colonizers, settlers in different parts of the American tropics continue doing so, thinking that they would bring progress to these regions. As I said before, probably 50% of the world's tropical forest has been removed for agriculture, and this accounts for approximately 12 million square kilometers of land. If agriculture is abandoned, the forest will usually return, especially if there are little patches in the vicinity that will somehow contribute to the seed bank dispersal that animals will put together in the effort of the restoration of these habitats. This process is called the secondary succession, as we said before. And remember that, for example, in Costa Rica, a lot of that had happened because of environmental service payments that we will talk about in a little bit. Anyone who travels in the tropics, no matter where you go, even in Costa Rica, who has done a super job in the conservation of tropical ecosystems, can witness the consequences of deforestation. When people destroy the forest, you open usually gaps in the canopy, pretty much like that one you're looking at right there, but of course at a greater extent. When that happens, solar radiation penetrates and impacts the soil, creating greater solar heating. The leaf litter, which is what we spoke about in the nutrient cycling video, dries up and it becomes more prone to fire. This is what's been happening in Brazil, and that's why systematic fires are happening in many regions of that part of South America. This becomes actually more exacerbated when El Nino, which brings droughts to certain regions of the tropics, is present. We are standing in front of a secondary forest. This is an early successional patch, which was a pasture field when I purchased the land. I left it abandoned and it grew back on its own, ate by birds, by small mammals and bats that disperse the seeds of a nearby forest patches and recover the forest to this particular extent. When people destroy rainforests, when they deforest these fabulous ecosystems, it's estimated that 85% of the carbon stored in all tropical trees and plants as they systematically destroy the forest is going to be released back to the atmosphere. This is certainly an effort that plants have made throughout their existence of decades of living, fixing carbon through photosynthesis process and incorporate that carbon in the fashion of a tree trunk. But when you slash and burn, you will end up by having all this carbon released back to the atmosphere. Climate change is definitely a big problem, and I would say it's like being in a room with a tiger. You know it's there, and you know it's gonna do something, and it's not gonna be meow.